This episode will be completely taken out of context. Welcome to the Fact Check This podcast.
All right, I'm back. After delaying last week to prepare for the snowpocalypse that was upon us, which delivered every bit of what they were expecting it to. We got upwards of 15 inches here. Some places got more than that. Just a little bit south of here, they didn't get quite as much snow as they got more of a snow and ice mix. I know Forte has been having some problems with all the ice and stuff that they had down around Tennessee area where he's from. So we weathered the storm. My original plan was to postpone Thursday to prepare for the storm and then do the Lord of the Rings thing on Sunday. And like I said, I mentioned Jay Forte. He and I got to talking, and we want to do the Lord of the Rings thing together. There's the article that I've got, and then there's some other stuff that he had, and we're going to do kind of a combination on that stuff and talk about a whole bunch of Lord of the Rings stuff all at once. But neither of us were going to be able to do that at all on Sunday. The storms hit every bit as hard as they were supposed to, and then some. And so it just wasn't going to work out for Sunday. So I thought we'd roll and do it this week on Thursday, but he's still having power issues where he is and other stuff. And just, I'm not quite ready for that one either. But I found a couple other articles that seemed like interesting fare, at least for what I do for this show. And I thought they would be good fill in to cover these two articles today. And then next week, hopefully me and Forte can get to the Lord of the Rings stuff. So we will cross our fingers for that, try to make that happen. In the meantime, we are going to talk about the R word. Oh, terrible, terrible. There are two different articles. I'll start with the first one first, and then the more recent one we'll look at as well. There's big. Okay, so it's been a big push for a while to create this stigma around certain words, because words are violence and words hurt feelings and blah 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 and all this bullshit. And so the word retard was one of them that got a stigma around it. Hang on just a second. Sorry, I didn't think y'all wanted to listen to me blow my nose. Okay, so retard is one of those words that's gotten this stigma around it. And my wife had even said at one point a few years ago, she's like, I feel like the way that you and all your friends use the word retard, it's kind of offensive to people who are actually retarded. I'm like, yeah, but we would never call somebody who's actually mentally handicapped a retard. That's offensive. Like, we would treat them with respect and dignity. We use the word retard for people who are faggots. And we don't mean faggot as in homosexual. We mean as in retarded. And we don't mean retarded as in mentally challenged. We faggot. And it's hard for some people to wrap their head around this. And so then everything becomes this stigmatized, oh, words are violence, that hurts people's feelings. It's like, yeah, well, don't be such a retarded faggot and your feelings wouldn't be hurt by it. I don't know what to tell you. So anyway, those two words in particular, there has been, for some reason, mainstream media feels like they need to do a bunch of research on how often words are being used on social media, particularly on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, which is fucking hilarious and fantastic. That's the most important thing that they can do with their time is research how many times people are using the words retard and faggot on X. It's like these are the things that are important, obviously. Yes. Do that. Don't actually, like, I don't know, take time to report real news or talk about crime statistics or, like, you know, how many illegal criminals there are in the country and how many of them actually are committing violent crimes and doing all of that stuff while y'all cry about deporting all of them. Like, yeah, let's talk about how many times people are saying retard and faggot on fucking Twitter. God. bunch of retarded faggots running these media institutes that are doing these surveys and these research. So anyway, after Trump got reelected, actually, I guess it was last year, 2025. I thought for some reason I thought there was well, I think there have actually been a few articles about this, but this was like the big one that came out from Rolling Stone in December. I know there had been others that came out earlier in 2025 right after Trump got elected and right after inauguration about how the R word was making a comeback. Well, they've spent a lot of time obsessing over this. So we're going to read a couple of articles that talk about the history of the R word, a complete history of the R word, in fact, and the MAGA movement's favorite slur. Donald Trump recently used the pejorative to attack Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, adding to a chorus of right-wing influencers wielding it against opponents. Well, if our opponents, aka Governor Tim Walz and all the other Democrats of his ilk, weren't so retarded, we wouldn't have to use the word against them the way we do. The weaponizing the word retard is one of the lines that I'd seen somewhere, and I can't remember where it was, but it's like, yes, that's the point. That's the point. Oh, on the evening before Thanksgiving, the President of the United States took to his social media platform to claim in a lengthy screed that immigration was destroying the country. Objectively true. In one spurious example Donald Trump offered in his Truth Social post, he warned falsely that hundreds of thousands of refugees from Somalia were completely taking over the state of Minnesota, with dangerous migrant gangs roving the streets as citizens cowered in fear at home. Okay. Hundreds of thousands of refugees from Somalia taking over the state of Minnesota is not false. People might not be cowering in fear at home, and there may or may not be migrant gangs roaming the streets, but Somalian refugees taking over the state of Minnesota is not objectively untrue. Like, choose your wording better, Rolling Stone. I don't know why we would expect better writing from the Rolling Stone. Like, I have become aware of how I word things and the wording that I use and the way that I use it in text posts especially on Facebook. And being aware of the order in which you word things and the way that you use those words can go a long way to conveying what you're meaning in your post a lot more clearly and without opening up the door to as much not controversy, but argument. Like, choosing your words well. I swear 80% of the shit I read on the internet is written by fucking AI, and it is absolute horseshit. Which, I mean, is this any surprise? Like, journalists and stuff are fake jobs anyway, and they're just propagandists. So it'd be easy to believe that 80 to 90% of their work is done by AI, and then they just go in and proofread enough to make sure that some of their woke bullshit propaganda talking points get injected into their article here and there. That's what I assume all journalists do. And so they just let AI write the article, and then they go in and find places to plug in their nonsense. Bunch of retards. Anyway, Trump laid the blame squarely on Governor Tim Walz, the Democratic Party's 2024 nominee for vice president. The seriously retarded governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, does nothing, either through fear, incompetence, or both, Trump fumed. In the not-too-recent past, it would have been unthinkable for a president to attack his political opponent using a derogatory term for people with intellectual disabilities. Again, we don't call you a retard because you have an intellectual disability. We call you a retard because you're a faggot. And we don't call you a faggot because you're gay or homosexual. We call you a faggot because you're a retard. Even a Republican Indiana State Senator Mike Bohack, what a fucking bitch, rebuked Trump for his language in a Facebook post, saying it was reason enough to oppose a GOP-favored redistricting measure in his state. That dude needs to be drug out of his house by his fucking toes, hung upside down, and beat with a fucking stick. That's the most retarded thing a state senator from Indiana has ever said, very possibly. And if we can't do that, then at least primary him and get him out of office, never to be seen or heard from in the state of Indiana again. I have been an unapologetic advocate for people with intellectual disabilities since the birth of my second daughter, who has Down syndrome, he wrote, noting that Trump's choice of words have consequences. Trump naturally doubled down on his statement days later. And not only that, but people started driving by Tim Walz' house yelling it at him, which is perfect. Absolutely perfect. The president's epithet didn't come out of thin air. Across the internet during the 2024 election and in the first year of his second term, MAGA influencers have increasingly used the R word to insult and scandalize conceited woke liberals, normalizing a slur that had been largely purged from the national vocabulary. The trend reflects not only a coarsening of public discourse under Trump, but new depths of callousness and cruelty in America, with disability advocates warning of the term's dehumanizing effect. Elon Musk alone has dropped the word more than 30 times on his X account since early 2024, while Joe Rogan has said that its return represents an important win for right-wingers. The word retarded is back, and it's one of the great culture victories, the podcaster crowed in an April episode of his show. Louvel Anderson, head of the philosophy department at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, has written extensively on the lexical category of slurs. This might be the most retarded line in this entire article. Louvel Anderson, head of the philosophy department at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, has written extensively on the lexical category of slurs. He describes the Trump world's pushback against the elimination of the R word as part of the larger project of asserting ideology. The attempted reintroduction of retarded into the public language by people on the far right has less to do with changing meaning and more to do with an attempted shift in values. From the far right's perspective, reintroducing a word we are taught not to say is a rebellious act meant to take back power. Open defiance is a clear sign that the old gatekeepers are no longer in charge. The old gatekeepers were a bunch of faggots. They were a bunch of retarded queers who needed to be removed. That's what we did. We got rid of them. Because, as I've explained before, we don't call each other all of these derogatory slurs to make fun of gay people or mentally challenged people. It's directly used to make fun of the person who's being a retarded faggot. That's it. That's all it is. It was given all of this additional cultural meaning in order to stigmatize it so that they could do away with it, because the people who were being called retarded faggots were acting like a bunch of retarded faggots and didn't like that they kept getting called that when they obviously deserved to be called it. So here we are. Now they're getting their comeuppance. So how exactly did we get here? To understand that, we have to chart the history and term over hundreds of years. Good God, we got to take it. It's really not that serious, but this is what they have to spend their time writing about. We're going to track back hundreds of years to talk about the origins of the word retard, so that we can figure out why it is that right wingers are calling a bunch of retarded faggots on Twitter. That's like, this is where we are now. Welcome to our society. It's fucking lost. Retard is a verb derived from the Latin verb retardere, meaning to make slow or to delay. To hinder something's or someone's progress is to retard it. Retarded is a corresponding adjective referring to whomever or whatever has been slowed down, and retardant describes that which is capable of inhibiting in this way. A flame retardant substance, for example, helps to reduce or halt the spread of fire. English and other languages included versions of these words as far back as the 15th century. I'm going to keep going. It's too much. By the 19th century, clinical psychologists were applying old words such as idiot and imbecile to categorize people with intellectual disabilities, and sometimes inventing new ones. In 1910, the American eugenicist Henry H. Goddard coined the term moron, suggesting it as a replacement for the description feeble-minded, which he found too vague for his liking. To receive one of these designations from a doctor in this era was to be marked as unfit for society and a candidate for potential institution. And, oh, fuck, where'd the rest of the article go? Hang on, I gotta refresh it. Interestingly enough, with the terms imbecile, idiot, and moron, there are actually very specific categories of mental impairedness that someone has to fall into to receive one of those specific words referring to them. And if I call somebody an idiot or an imbecile or a moron, I try to kind of go with those guidelines to some extent. Like, I'm not calling somebody retarded because I think they're mentally challenged. I'm calling somebody retarded because they're slow and they're stupid. Not because they actually have a mental retardation. They're not because they actually have something wrong with them. Hang on. I'm having some issues with this article all of a sudden. So anyway, without going through 150 years of word history, the Rolling Stone will go on to explain why it is that we had to work so hard to remove this word from day-to-day life that is just so stigmatizing and so horrible to call somebody retarded. Here we go. All right, I get it back. Sorry. I don't know why. Rolling Stone does this from time to time. Whenever I've been reading articles, they don't want to cooperate. Oh, that was the wrong one. Come on. Oh my God. Let's see. What do we say? Oh, to receive one of these designations from a doctor in this era was to be marked as unfit for society and a candidate for potential institution and sterilization. They were serious about, like, okay, if you're a hunter, you understand that bad racks breed bad racks. So if you see a buck that has a little tiny twisted mangled up rack on it, call that fucker out. Don't let him breed, because he is going to reproduce more bucks that have tiny mangled ugly little fucking racks. You want the ones with the big nice rack to go out and breed all the doe and have more bucks running around with nice big racks. Call out the ones with the little mangled tiny fucked up racks. Right. Okay, so the same is true for people with mental handicaps. Dumb people breed more dumb people. That's just kind of how it works. Sorry. So institutionalization and sterilization for people who were idiots, imbeciles, and morons was how they addressed that. And you would have thought that at some point we have stopped having these people in society, but they stopped institutionalizing and sterilizing them and let them just breed without any, and started welfare programs to incentivize them to breed. And then here we are 50, 60 years later, and you see what society has devolved into. A bunch of imbeciles, idiots, and morons running rampant everywhere. As those words were adopted for epithets of abuse outside clinical settings, some of the medical community sought to move towards less loaded language. The first known use of retarded to characterize the intellectually disabled dates to 1895, with mental retardation slowly but surely replacing the previous terminology in medical literature over the course of the 20th century. This was reflected in the names of advocacy groups, including the National Association for Retarded Children and the American Association for Mental Retardation, which have since been renamed as ARC of the United States and the American Association on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, respectively. In recognition of the rise of the harmful use of retard as a slur. But retarded did remain accepted scientific language into the 1980s and 1990s. John McWhorter, an associate professor of linguistics at Columbia University, who examined profanity and slurs in his 2021 book, 9 Nasty Words, says that the R word was partially meant to be a neutralizing solution to words like imbecile, becoming offensive slang. My sense is that moron and idiot were the ones shelved for the more euphemistic retarded, which originally would have felt like just slowed down by factors beyond their control, he tells Rolling Stone. But once retarded felt like moron, we started using terms like special needs. And note what that term is starting to feel like in public discourse. A stigmatizing pejorative. The issue with simply switching from something like idiot to the R word, McWhorter explains, is that the replacement term enters a euphemism treadmill and will eventually acquire the stigma of the last word. A word takes on unpleasant associations, he says. Those who wish to use a word with fewer associations, such as to protect a group of people, suggest a new term. Problem is, that term, after a while, takes on the same associations. Bum is changed to homeless, but when homeless feels as mean as bum, we change it to unhoused, and that term will soon feel the same way. There's been a similar progression, McWhorter notes, from crippled to handicapped to disabled. As such, the R word gained traction as a slang put down through the middle of the 20th century, almost as soon as it was default medical terminology. And by the 1970s, disability activists were campaigning to retire the word. It is probably no coincidence that Musk and Rogan, two outspoken fans of the epithet, are Gen Xers who were born right around the time when popular culture had fully embraced it for bullying purposes. Anderson says that what happened with the R word is hardly unique. The process of words moving from neutral to pejorative is called perjuration, he explains. This happens all the time. For example, it also happens with idiot and feeble-minded, both terms that were used in a neutral way, but then shifted to be something more negative. Negro is another term that comes to mind that has gone through this process. My grandmother, to her death, would refer to any black person as Negro, not because it was a derogatory term, but because that's just what they did. And she never bothered to grow out of that. She lived to be 94, and she was going to be exactly who she was for an entire fucking century, and she didn't care. So it wasn't meant as a derogatory thing. It was just a word. And that's what a lot of this stuff is. Like, they're just words. You take the meaning from it that you want. The meaning that I infer to somebody when I call them a retard versus the meaning that they actually take from it and have in their head as what it was supposed to be may be two completely different things. But if I call you an imbecile, I fucking mean it. The status and meaning of expressions has much to do with shifting language ideologies, Anderson said, reflecting the values, morals, and politics of a social world. Often we come to feel positively or negatively about an expression or expect words to be used in specific contexts and ways because of language ideologies. That the R word came to serve as a common disparagement for people who are not intellectually disabled revealed a societal lack of empathy and care for those who are, which is absolute fucking horseshit. It's not, we don't call somebody retarded because we don't care about people who actually have mental disabilities. In fact, if anything, it's the opposite. Like, this person is retarded We would never call you that because you aren't as retarded as they are. This is actually meant as a compliment to legitimately mentally handicapped people. And I think a lot of them understand that too. I think a lot of them would call the people retarded that we call retarded. Activist campaign leads to a change in laws. In 2009, the U.S. saw a renewed call to force the R word out of circulation. Youth activists, it's always the fucking retarded youths. Youth activists working with the Special Olympics launched a campaign called Spread the Word to End the Word to mark that year's Winter Games. Students across the country were encouraged to sign a pledge to stop their derogatory use of the term. God, I'm glad I was out of school at that point. I done tore their fucking pledge up and told them, get the fuck out of my face, you retard. Eventually, the campaign expanded into a general movement for inclusion and celebration of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The following year, Rahm Emanuel, then White House Chief of Staff under President Obama, was embroiled in a scandal when it emerged that he had used the term in a private meeting the previous summer. Oh, no! He apologized to a number of disability rights activists, including Special Olympics Chief Executive Tim Shriver, and said he would not only take the Spread the Word to End the Word pledge, but ensure that the Obama administration would work with the organization on efforts to remove the R word from the text of federal laws. What Rahm Emanuel should have done was get up there and say, I did not call that person a retard because I think they're mentally challenged. I called them a retard because they're a faggot and a retard. I would never refer to any of you as retarded. I feel I have much more respect for you than that. Retarded is not a derogatory term for mentally challenged people. It's a derogatory term for the retarded faggot that it's being aimed at. That's it. Period. And that would have solved the problem right then and there. We could have got rid of the whole what's the thing called? Spread the word to end the word. Good God, like come up with a better fucking name of your movement than Spread the Word to End the Word. And that's so drawn out. I mean, just call it Stop Saying Retard and be done with it. You don't need all this extra bullshit. Spread the word to end the word. Oh, I need better marketing from these retards. In October 2010, Obama signed legislation to that effect. The measure, known as Rosa's Law, was named for Rosa Marcelino, a 9-year-old with Down syndrome who, along with her parents, successfully fought to remove the term mental retardation from health and education records in her home state of Maryland. The federal law likewise amended government documentation removing mental retardation and mentally retarded in favor of intellectual disability and individual with an intellectual disability. Several states had already begun making this revision, as had bureaucratic agencies, including the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. I don't think I like intellectual disability very much more. It's like, oh, guess what? You're disabled. Like, no, I'm just slow. I'm not disabled. I don't know. You have a disability. I feel like that's more offensive. I don't know. Maybe I'm on the wrong side of history on this. I don't give a shit. All told, it seems as if the word was moving on from a term that had fully transformed into a harmful slur. There were signs, however, that some would not be giving it up. Absolutely not. After a 2012 presidential debate, right-wing commentator Ann Coulter called Obama a retard on Twitter, sparking outrage and demands for a public apology from disability activists. Coulter doubled down on her remarks in a CNN interview. I was not referring to someone with Down syndrome. I was referring to the President of the United States, she said, explaining that she viewed the word as synonymous for loser. Yes, that's how you handle this shit. Fuck them. Do you call people with mental disabilities retards, she asked? Because I don't. I think it's a nasty thing to do. Absolutely. God, I love Ann Coulter. Maybe not, but at least she's right on that. Trump's 2016 presidential run brought moments of shocking incivility from the insurgent candidate. Oh, my God. Rolling Stone writers are such fucking retards. Shocking incivility from the insurgent candidate. Almost a year after he took a moment at a South Carolina rally to perform a mocking impression of New York Times reporter Sergei Kovalsky, who has the congenital joint condition arthrogryposis A poll found that voters still judged it his most offensive moment on the campaign trail. One of his most base moments, fuck you. While in office, Trump regularly lobbed profanities, apparently regarding them as a natural element of his populist appeal. That's one of the things that I always said. I want a politician who's going to just talk like a normal person, like cuss every once in a while, be a little bit out there and say shit that you shouldn't. Like, we got these like super duper whitewashed, really, really professional politicians for a while, and they just seemed unreal. Like you're not a real human being. Are you a robot? Are you a clone? Like the Futurama where they have John Jackson running against Jack Johnson, and they're just fucking clones. That's how all of the politicians felt for a long time. Is like they're just these like really whitewashed, useless fucks. Give us somebody with some fucking personality. And then Trump comes along, and he's got all the personality. It was not until 2024, however, during an election that saw Trump relentlessly attack Joe Biden as a president in steep cognitive decline. Can we really argue that, though? That MAGA culture warriors made a concerted effort to revive the term as a standard verbal jab. I'm sorry. If you think it took us until 2024 to start trying to bring back the word retard, you are actually retarded. We've been trying to bring this back for as long as y'all have been trying to take it away from us. Fuck you. They were aided in this by Musk's 2022 acquisition of Twitter, which he rebranded as X and stripped of various moderation policies, reinstating extremist conspiracy theorists and peddlers of misinformation who had been banned under those guidelines. He began using the R word himself on the platform and engaging with like-minded users, including the anonymous far-right retard finder profile based in Australia that appends the slur to pictures of U.S. liberals and Democrats. The account was opened in December of 2024 and now has more than 800,000 followers. If you don't follow Retard Finder on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, you absolutely should. And get your daily dose of retards of the day and whatnot. It's a lot of fun. I love that account. Love it. In January, researchers at Montclair State University tracked the use of the R word in the days after Trump responded "F you, retard" to a Finnish researcher who posted on X that month that he was rapidly becoming the largest spreader of disinformation in human history. They demonstrated a more than 200% spike in posts containing the word over the following 2 days. 312,642 examples in all. That's fucking awesome. F you, retard is peak. And saying that X is rapidly becoming the largest information in human history is actually retarded. That's like, who uses anything else for actual news? Like, at this point, I get 100% of my news from X, from Twitter, because that's where I know I can actually find stuff being talked about for real. Find the real videos, find the real news, not the propaganda spin that NBC and CBS and ABC and all of the mainstream media are going to be put into it. Even Fox News, even the spin that Fox is going to put on it. You can find the real news on Twitter, on X. And you can also find all of that spin because ABC, NBC, all of them have accounts on there and they post their spun up articles. And then you can go through the comments and find everybody completely tearing it apart on all the things they fucking lie about. It's beautiful. It's amazing. But it wasn't just Musk driving these trends. According to the study's authors, while it might be tempting to view an event such as this as an isolated one-off, indications are that widespread dissemination of hateful and marginalized content may be an increasingly prominent feature on social media. They wrote, observing that Facebook parent Meta had recently dismantled some of its safeguards against dehumanizing language, apparently in concession to the political climate about to be ushered in with the second Trump term. This week, the paper's co-authors, Bond Benton, a communications professor and justice studies professor, Daniela Paterka Benton, released new findings that showed a sharp rise in the use of the R word on X in the days after Trump applied it to walls. In effect, the effect was quite similar to the trend they identified in the wake of Musk's January R word post, a 225.7% increase in usage, or 1.12 million R word posts in the week following Trump's Truth Social diatribe. A lot of people face similar stressors in society right now, from cultural challenges to economic challenges to perceptions that they're being marginalized in some way, Benton tells Rolling Stone. When you can say a word that you know is going to be hurtful to a lot of people, there could be a sort of power in that. You go from being vulnerable to being perceived as dangerous. It's not about being dangerous. And it's not about hurting a lot of people. It's about the person that you're calling retarded. And that's literally it. Why do you have to apply it to all of society? Now, if I say all leftists are retards, then I'm applying it to all of them, and I intend for it to be hurtful to all of them. And I accept the fact that some people who vote for Democrats are also mentally handicapped, but I don't mean that they are retarded in the same sense that I mean that leftists are retarded. Does that make sense? Yes. Everybody understands what I mean. Moving on. Benton believes right-wingers may be seeking validation by making others angry in this way. No, there's no seeking validation. You're just calling a spade a spade. You're calling a retard a retard. He also points out that this slur is surging in popularity at the same time that MAGA figures are saying that the cost of compassion has hurt our country. Objectively, it has. It may be no coincidence that they're specifically marginalizing a group that relies on the social safety nets they want to do away with. I think that is stigmatizing, and I think that is insensitive and dehumanizing to act like people who are mentally challenged just can't exist without the government allowing them to. I know plenty of people who are deeply mentally handicapped. They have full-time jobs. They have their own apartments. Some of them even have pets. They have social lives. They don't need to be coddled and taken care of. And that's not to say that there isn't a certain percentage of people with mental handicaps that don't need that. But again, you start splitting hairs on this. Like, take individual cases based on the individual. Don't lump everybody in together. Well, this collectivist bullshit is fucking retarded. Not using the R word has sort of become synonymous with wokeness, observes Paterka Benton. Using it today, she says, is about regaining the power to decide what can be said publicly while completely disregarding the harm that has been done to the disability community. What harm? Paterka Benton adds that heated discourse around such slurs can also act as a diversion from bigger problems, from economic inequality to lingering questions about Trump's ties to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And she says, as with the demonization of undocumented migrants, to keep repeating the R word means being the bullies in the room against populations that are inherently not as strong as the mainstream. Whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean. Whatever its ideological value to the far right, though, the R word may also simply be a way of compensating for the Trump administration's failure to deliver on key promises. Grocery prices are up. That's interesting. Because I've heard this, inflation is down, but is it really? And grocery prices are down, but they're actually up, but are they? Stephanie was looking at her grocery bill for 2025, like the average amount of money she spent on groceries every month through the course of the year 2025. And she said objectively she spent less money on groceries last year than she has in previous years. Like, is the economy doing better or worse? I don't know, but my wife buys 80% of our groceries, and she said, going through her budgets and stuff for the year, that she spent less money on groceries last year than she had in the years previous. That says a lot. I mean, that's just where it hits home. Limited disclosures about Epstein haven't led to prosecutions of Democrats. Does anybody actually give a fuck about that anymore? The country is inching towards a mad war with Venezuela. It's not. And millions are set to lose Medicaid coverage. They're the ones who are losing it are the illegals who shouldn't be on it anyway. Sorry, tough shit. Go the fuck home. You don't belong here anyway. But you're free to throw the word retarded around online. As one ex-user summarized recent polling data that shows Trump's disapproval rate has topped 60%. Where? I do a ton of polls. I do a lot of YouGov polls and a lot of other, typically leftist-leaning polls. And even a lot of them don't put Trump at a disapproval rating of 60%. Where does Rolling Stone come up with this bullshit? They just throw numbers out there and nobody's going to look into it. Nobody actually knows, so they don't question it like that. There's no 60% disapproval rating for Trump. Maybe on really specific issues, he might, but not overall. You wanted a return to 2019 America, but all you got is the R-word pass, and it's already looking as if that wasn't quite the deal of a lifetime. Well, that's been a pretty good fucking deal because nobody's really making any effort to stop us, and it seems to be doing the job that it's intended to do by pissing off the right people who it's aimed at to piss off. So I don't know that wasn't such a great deal, and a lot of that other bullshit there at the end was just that. It was just retarded bullshit. It's not based on anything, and it's all pejorative from whoever this dipshit fucking author is. The typical Rolling Stones fare, basically. Moving on to the other article. This one's from Time Magazine. It's a little bit, or no, not Time Magazine. That was a different article I was reading. This one's from the New York Times. I'll try to go through it a little quicker than I did the first one. Shouldn't have the delays where the article doesn't want to fucking load. So again, New York Times, and this was just from last week, maybe earlier this week. Yeah, earlier this week. The R-word returns, dismaying those who fought to oust it. The term, long considered a slur for those with intellectual disabilities, is seeing a resurgence on social media and across the political right. Now, again, I'm going to cover this one a lot faster, and I'm not going to, I'll mostly just read it and not cut in a whole lot like I did on the first one, because it is rehashing a lot of the same things that the first one covered, but, from a slightly different perspective coming from the New York Times. Late last month, a woman posted a photograph on social media of a purple hat she had knitted while a black and white dog lounged on a carpet a few feet away. The cozy scene was accompanied by a single sentence: "This hat is an hour behind schedule thanks to influencer retards." The proud knitter, Harmeet K. Dillon, is also the Assistant Attorney General overseeing the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division. Her purview includes protecting the rights of people with intellectual disabilities by ensuring compliance with the Americans with Disability Acts. For decades now, the R word has been regarded as a slur against people with intellectual disabilities, and a word to be avoided. Yet it has had a striking resurgence, in part because people in high-profile positions of power and influence have chosen to resurrect it, often with an air of defiance. The word retarded is back, the popular podcaster Joe Rogan declared in April, describing its return as one of the great cultural victories. He did not respond to requests for elaboration, but there is abundant evidence to support his muscular declaration. In the past 3 months, the musician Kid Rock donned a face mask while appearing on a program streaming on Fox Nation and said he was dressing up as a retard for Halloween. He was also wearing a Jesus trucker cap. The Fox News personality Greg Gutfeld coupled the word with a schoolyard taunt to mock mayors who opposed President Trump, and Elon Musk used it on his social media platform to insult a critic. The word has recently been uttered on the podcast of white nationalist Nick Fuentes and the right-wing commentators Derek Hunter, Steven Crowder, and Tim Pool. The use of a hurtful word is considered taboo. The use of a hurtful word still considered taboo is emblematic of the provocative language that courses through the manosphere sector of social media these days. Almost gleefully transgressive language often adopted in messaging from the White House. Diplomacy is out and mockery in. Yes! Whether by displaying plaques that insult former presidents, which is fucking hilarious, depicting Mr. Trump spraying excrement on protesters from a military jet, or using the R word to question the intelligence of a political opponent, as Mr. Trump did in a Truth Social post on Thanksgiving Day, in which he called Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz seriously retarded. When asked later whether he stood by that statement, Mr. Trump said absolutely, because he thought there was something wrong with the governor. For her part, Ms. Dillon did not answer questions about her use of the word. The word's proliferation has alarmed many advocates and people with disabilities who thought it had long since been removed from circulation. The drumbeat and use of this word has been nothing like I've seen in a long time, said Kathy Neese, the executive chief of the ARC of the United States, a disability rights organization. She called its use by the Justice Department civil rights chief simply mind-blowing. The word's return raises an obvious question. Why? Why is it a bad thing if the Justice Department civil rights, the Assistant Attorney General overseeing the Justice Department Civil Rights Division, including compliance with Americans with Disability Act, if she uses the word retards, then obviously that means it's not being used as or meant as a derogatory term against people with mental disabilities. Obviously, this isn't like rocket science. Sorry, but any retard could figure this out, right? The word's return raises an obvious question. Why? Why decide to resurrect a term well known to offend a community that has been historically marginalized, so much so that its usage prompted public awareness campaigns and wholesale changes to nomenclature? Ann Coulter explained it really well, as a matter of fact, but can't get everybody to get on that page. I think there's a perception of power, of I am powerful, therefore I can use this language. I am powerful, and therefore I can diminish others, Ms. Nays said. She added, it's language used by bullies to bully. Doing away with bullying was one of the greatest cultural missteps that we have seen in the last century. Bullies are necessary for a civilized society. And getting rid of bullies was an absolute failure on our part to maintain our culture and society. This isn't a power play. It's not some, oh, I'm powerful, I can say what I want. No, you're a fucking retard, and you should be called retarded if you're being retarded. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's not a power play. You're a dumbass. You're a fucking dipshit. You're a moron. You are a retard, and you should be treated as such. That's it. Stop being retarded, and we won't call you a retard. How about that? To Amy Hewitt, the director of the Institute on Community Integration at the University of Minnesota. Jesus, all these fucking institutes and bullshit. At the University of Minnesota, the word's return reflects a divisiveness defining the United States of 2026, in which a sizable part of the population believes that many people are a drain on our society, on our progress, on what makes us great. Correct. She pointed in particular to the Trump administration's dismantling of diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. It's not just about race and ethnicity. It's also about disability, she said. This is why the R word is completely acceptable to them. It's us versus them. Except that the us is people who positively contribute to our society, and the them are people who are leeches on society. It's not about mental handicap. It's not about, and In fact, I bet you would be hard-pressed to find very many right-wingers who don't think that there are certain people with mental disabilities who absolutely 100% should be taken care of. I bet you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody who thinks that. It's the illegals and the leeches, the mooches and the ones who are lazy, useless fucks that we want pulled off of the teat. The people with actual mental disability that cannot fend for themselves, yes, they should absolutely be taken care of. We get it. We don't disagree. I bet you'd be pressed to find anybody who disagrees with that. The use of the word has skyrocketed on X, Mr. Musk's social media platform. In 2020, it appeared on the platform and then known as Twitter just over 2,000 times a day, according to a recent study by two Montclair State University researchers. There's no way this can, like, you can have a real job to research how many times retard is said on Twitter over the last 10 years. That number is now over 46,000 times a day, a more than 2,000% increase. You got to pump them numbers up, baby. The researchers, Bon Benton, a communications professor, and Daniela Perquita Benton, a justice studies should not be a thing either, said the word's use rose after Musk bought the platform in 2022 and then spiked when he included it in an X post in 2025. But this Musk-induced growth was a blip when compared to what followed the week after Mr. Trump's disparagement of Mr. Walz in late November. Use of the word increased by more than 200%, with more than 1.1 million posts on X employing the word. Most of them, the study's authors noted, conveyed enthusiastic endorsement of the term's apparent restoration. Except that we just went through it on the Rolling Stone, so here's where the New York Times is blatantly lying, because when Musk used the word for that Finnish dipshit back in April or whatever, the increase immediately following Musk using it was about the same as Trump calling Tim Walz. And Trump didn't even make the post on Twitter. So how are you correlating that? Like, the 200% increase was about the same. So it wasn't a blip compared to Trump. They were about the same. And Trump didn't even make this post on Twitter. So, like, they're just looking for things to connect to blame anybody else for the fact that we're back, baby. Musk influences a lot of people, especially in the manosphere. So we had a hunch that the platform was going to have more use of the term, Dr. Benton said. Then when Trump used it, it was like a nuclear bomb. Defenders of the word's use say that it's intended in part to clap back at political correctness, wokeness, and perceived infringements of the right to free speech. There are so many words in the English language that have been driven out of use because we've been told that they're politically incorrect, Mark Meckler said, a right-wing activist and self-described free speech warrior, said in his podcast this month. Well, that's just cultural Marxism. So this has now come back into common use, and I'm actually glad it has, because it just shows we've been recapturing language from the woke left, said Mr. Meckler, who, in adding that he did not mean to insult mentally handicapped people, used another term that disability advocates say is outdated. Those who defend the word's use often contend that it is meant as a synonym for stupid or slow, and not as a reference to people with intellectual disabilities. It's not really like anybody wants to make fun of people who are slow when it comes to brain development, the conservative commentator Megyn Kelly said on her podcast last month. It's that they're sick and tired of being told what they can and cannot say. No one's trying to actually say something negative about the community. They're trying to say something about the person they're targeting, that they're kind of slow. Yes. But many people with intellectual disabilities and their advocates consider this distinction to be disingenuous, if not a complete cop-out. The word, they say, continues to wound. Well, if a word hurts you, that's on you. Why do we have a picture of some random black chick, and why does she look like she is actually slow? I guess we're finding out. Jesus. I love when they just throw in random ass people Like, especially when it's random ass teenagers in these articles. Like, nobody gives a fuck what a teenager thinks anyway. Definitely not some random ass teenager that gets interviewed for an article in the fucking New York Times. You shut the fuck up. Helena Donato Sapp, 16, of Long Beach, California, is a junior in high school with several learning disabilities. Last semester, while walking through campus at lunchtime, she heard a classmate call a friend the R word and was taken aback by a word she associates with shame. It makes me feel bad and confused that people still use it, she said. The terminology for people with intellectual disabilities has evolved over generations, with words like idiot, imbecile, feeble-minded, and moron having their moment before being phased out for reasons of imprecision or hurtfulness, or both. I bet you if Helena Donato Sapp went up to the person that called somebody else a retard and said, "That hurt my feelings," the person would have said, "I'm not talking about you. I would never call you that. I actually respect you. That retard over there, though? Nah, fuck them." Giving you a big hug, and then you could have felt better about life. Guarantee it. What united them, though, was an implied sense of otherness that, among other effects, gave oxygen to the pseudoscience of eugenics. Wow. Okay, so I skimmed these pretty quickly, and I guess I completely skimmed over the part where they connect the use of idiot, imbecile, and moron to eugenics. It's fucking God. I love the New York Times. Bunch of retards. By the 1950s, mental retardation had become the socially acceptable medical term of choice, but it too devolved into a pejorative. The phrase became part of what linguistics experts refer to as euphemism treadmill, which we've already talked about. As people with intellectual disabilities began more and more to speak up for themselves, they made their dislike of the R word clear. The consensus was it's mean, hurtful, harassing. It's personally offensive. Again, if you are hurt by me calling someone else a retard that has absolutely nothing to do with you in any way, that's on you, and that also kind of makes you retarded. Rejection of the term gradually took hold. In 1992, for example, the Association of Retarded Citizens of the United States changed its name to what is today ARC of the United States. Ms. Nace, its chief executive, said that advocates, including those with intellectual disabilities, argue that words matter. The words have to be fully inclusive and not in any way language that separates or denigrates people. That's just not how language works. Sorry, shut the fuck up. At the 2009 Special Olympics in Idaho, youth advocates galvanized in part by repeating the use of the word in the film Tropic Thunder, sparked a global movement called Spread the Word to End the Word. Disability advocates called out anyone who used the word, including President Barack Obama's chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, who subsequently apologized and agreed to sign a pledge to end the use of the word. Perhaps the most significant rejection of the word came in 2010 with Rose's Law, named for the girl with Down syndrome that we talked about back in the first article. Let me blow my nose again. Among those present for the signing ceremony was Jill Eggle, a disability advocate who a year earlier had been a driving force in having the word eliminated at the state level in Virginia. The cause was personal. As a child growing up in Virginia, she had been declared mildly mentally retarded. I had a hard time because I was made fun of and laughed at. I didn't have a boyfriend. I was always ridiculed and always, just was the odd one out. No boy ever asked me to prom and stuff. I mean, that's sad and tragic. But I think it says a lot about your parents as well. They all called me retarded, and I tried to be nice, but it wasn't the way it should be, and it was hurtful. See, that's not using the word in the spirit of what it's meant to be. And some kids are hurtful, and some kids deserve to be smacked upside the fucking head and told that they are a faggot and to knock it the fuck off. Because you don't talk to actually mentally handicapped people that way. Like, be humane, be nice. Now, on the other hand, if somebody with a mental handicap starts acting like a retard, then you should 100% call them retarded. But make sure they understand it's not because of their mental disability. It's because of their retarded behavior. The same for like if a gay person starts acting like a fucking fag, then you call them a fag. But it's not because they're gay. It's because they're being a fag. And make sure that they understand the difference, right? Like, words matter. Understanding of words really matters. Like, I do a lot of Bible study stuff, and like the Greek language is amazing because the Greeks would have like 9 different words for what we have one word for. And I feel like we need to get away from, like, we need to be more specific with the words we use. Like, if I call you an imbecile, I fucking mean it. But if I call you a retard, that's something wholly different. And if I call you a dipshit, that's something entirely different. Like, we need to have very specialized words for what we're saying. That way there is no confusion as to what we mean when we say it, right? I really feel like we had made so much progress, said Andrea Kahn, the vice president of the Unified Champions School, the Special Olympics umbrella program that oversaw the campaign. The use of the word really seemed to have been diminished. Maybe I'm retarded today. The use of the word really seemed to have been diminished. And then it came back. Special Olympics saw a spike in alerts from athletes and people with intellectual disabilities about the increased use of the word. Ms. Kahn said that the thrust of many messages was, can you do something? Can you make them stop? No, you can't. No, you can't. Advocates say it's surprising that the word is being heard more frequently. You've got the president of the United States using the word. Why are we so surprised? Nicole LeBlanc, 40, of Silver Spring, Maryland, an advocate who has autism and an intellectual disability, said she has noticed how the word has returned as a common everyday insult. Hearing it, she said, she feels the sting of stigma, even when it isn't directed at her or another person with a disability. It makes me want to run, hide, and curl up in a ball. I'm terribly sorry that it makes you feel like that, but that's pretty fucking retarded. If it's not intended at you, if it's not aimed at you, if it's not aimed at somebody else with an actual mental disability, then it's not for you and it doesn't fucking matter. How you respond to words is 100% on you, not on the person who's using it. And if you get easily butthurt, maybe you need to work on that. We're back, baby. Call everybody retarded faggots and love it. I know I'm going to. Although, for all of this, retard is perfectly fine on... I still haven't tested it on Facebook because I kind of like my Facebook account. I've got a decent little thing going, and I've managed to not get any suspensions in a while. And I'm trying to keep it that way. So there are plenty of situations where I would like to call somebody retarded and I choose not to. Although this video is going to be up on Facebook, and I've probably said retard a couple hundred times. I don't know how many. I haven't been counting. I'm not that kind of retarded. If this doesn't get taken down, maybe that means we are for real back on Facebook as well, and I can start like saying it to people on posts and stuff. But like there's like no hindrance of that on X. But I have noticed that, like, if you call somebody a fag, it doesn't get removed, and you don't get a like a strike or a suspension or anything for it, but they will limit the post. They won't let like people have to click on it until it's see post. It doesn't just show it in the general like scroller, people scrolling the replies. So we are still having our insults limited, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Keep pushing. We want real free speech. We want to be able to call everybody retarded faggots until they stop acting like retarded faggots. And I will see you, bunch of retarded faggots, again on Thursday. Later.